I've never liked late-night jobs, but desperation can push anyone into dark corners they'd rather avoid. My name is Ethan, and I'm just a college kid, constantly broke, trying to scrape together enough cash to survive another semester. I never imagined one desperate decision could turn my life into a nightmare. It was just past 10 p.m. when my phone buzzed. A strange notification popped up, a job from a gig app called Quicksend. I'd used it once or twice before for small deliveries, but never this late. Tonight's job was different, a single delivery. A mysterious package to be dropped off at Pinewood Motel Room 9 by midnight. $300 cash on delivery. The money was tempting, but Pinewood Motel had a reputation. Abandoned, creepy, and isolated. It was the last place anyone in Rosefield wanted to go after dark. Still, my wallet was empty, and my stomach growled in protest. I swallowed my fears and accepted the job. My first stop was a rundown 24-hour convenience store on the outskirts of town. I stepped inside to pick up the package. The store was empty, bathed in flickering fluorescent lights. Sam, the clerk behind the counter, handed me a heavy, poorly wrapped parcel. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't even speak. Just slid it toward me, mumbling, "Room 9. No questions." A chill ran down my spine, but I nodded anyway. Something was clearly wrong, but $300 spoke louder than fear. I took the package and left, trying to ignore the growing dread in my stomach. As I drove through the night, Pinewood Motel came into view, barely illuminated by my car's headlights. It stood like a rotting corpse at the edge of town. The neon sign was broken, flickering weakly in the darkness. Every window was shattered, every door boarded up, except Room 9, which I noticed uneasily was slightly ajar. I parked, grabbed the package, and stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my feet, the silence pressing down like heavy fog. My heart raced as I approached the open door. It swung gently back and forth, creaking softly, as if beckoning me closer. Pushing open the door, I shone my phone's flashlight inside. What I saw froze me instantly. The entire room was covered in sheets of plastic, walls, floor, furniture. Beneath the plastic were stains, dark and dried, unmistakably blood. My pulse quickened. The air felt thick, filled with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic. Suddenly I heard movement deeper within the darkness. A soft shuffle, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps. Panic surged through me. I quickly tossed the package onto the plastic-covered floor and stumbled backward toward the doorway. As soon as I stepped outside, my phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered shakily. "Hello?" No words, just breathing, heavy, rasping, close. I hung up immediately, sprinted to my car, and sped away, never looking back. That night, sleep never came. My mind replayed the scene endlessly. The plastic sheets, the blood, the unseen presence. Who had I delivered that package to? Or better yet, what had I delivered? The next morning, I turned on the news. My blood ran cold as the reporter mentioned Pinewood Motel. Local police have discovered evidence of recent criminal activity at Pinewood Motel. Suspicious packages, possible gang involvement. Anyone with information should come forward immediately. Guilt hit me like a punch. I had to do something, so I made an anonymous call from a payphone informing the police about Room 9 and the package. Relief washed over me. I thought it was over. But the following day, another news report made my heart stop again. Police followed up on a tip, but found no package in Room 9. Authorities suspect interference from whoever is responsible. Residents are urged to stay alert. The words echoed in my head. Someone had moved the package, someone who knew I'd called the police. My breathing grew shallow as fear gripped me again. Then my phone buzzed once more, another unknown number. A text message flashed across my screen. "You shouldn't have called them." My blood ran cold. They knew my name. They knew how to reach me. I felt trapped, helpless, watched. Days passed and sleep became impossible. Every noise startled me. Every shadow felt threatening. I was constantly checking my windows, expecting someone lurking outside. Paranoia consumed me, making me doubt every friendly face in town. Another message arrived late one evening, chilling my blood even further. We have another package, same payout. Pinewood Motel, room 9, midnight. Don't disappoint us again. I stared at the message, my heart racing. Could I risk refusing them? Another buzz followed quickly, this time a photo. It was my dorm building, my window circled in red. They knew exactly where I lived. I had no choice. Midnight arrived. I picked up the second package from the same convenience store. Sam again, avoiding my gaze. This package was heavier, colder. The silence felt oppressive. Returning to Pinewood Motel felt like walking back into a nightmare. Room 9's door was wide open this time. Plastic rustled inside, stirred by a phantom breeze. My chest tightened painfully. Everything in me screamed to run, but the threat hung heavily over my head. Taking slow, cautious steps, I entered again. My flashlight trembled as I placed the package down quickly, avoiding looking deeper into the darkness. But this time, something moved at the edge of my vision. A shadow shifting beneath the plastic sheets. My heart nearly stopped. "Who's there?" I whispered, voice cracking. Only silence, punctuated by my rapid breathing. Then, the rustling sound came again, closer now. Something brushed my arm. I screamed and bolted from the room, racing to my car. I barely started the engine when headlights flooded my rearview mirror. A black van pulled up silently, engine idling, headlights glaring menacingly at me. My phone vibrated again, and I knew without looking who it was. The screen lit up ominously. "We know who you are, Ethan. We'll see you soon." Terror flooded through me. They knew everything. My name, where I lived, who I was. Days have passed since then, but peace never came. Every night I sit awake, staring at my window, wondering when they'll come for me. And tonight, just moments before telling you this story, I received one final text. Midnight. Pinewood Motel, room 9. This time, you'll stay. I think they're already here, and now I hear footsteps outside my door. I was barely making rent, juggling college tuition, bills, and trying to keep my old Honda running. That's why I stuck with my job delivering pizzas for Tony's Pizza, even when Tony pushed me to take the late-night shifts nobody else wanted. Usually I didn't mind the hours, but everything changed one cold October night when I got the call that would haunt me forever. It was close to midnight when the last order buzzed on my phone. Tony, my boss, barely looked up from counting cash. "Jake, delivery just came in, Oak Ridge out by Greenville." I groaned internally. Oak Ridge was notorious, an isolated area at the edge of Pine Creek Woods. Locals whispered stories about it, calling it haunted, dangerous. Kids at college joked about the disappearances and spooky rumors, but none of us believed them, until now. "Can't someone else do it?" I asked half-heartedly, knowing Tony would never budge. "You leaving money on the table?" Tony snapped, glaring. I sighed, grabbed the hot pizza box, and stepped into the chilly night. The drive was unsettlingly quiet. My headlights barely pierced the darkness as I turned onto a narrow, winding dirt road leading deep into the forest. Soon the sparse lights of Greenville vanished entirely. I was alone, swallowed by dense trees and an oppressive blackness that made me grip the wheel tighter. Finally, the GPS chimed and I slowed near a weather-beaten cabin, barely visible through a dense thicket. My headlights flickered over its grim, peeling paint. The windows were cracked, darkened like hollow eyes staring at me. No lights, no cars, nothing but the woods, pressing in from all sides. I parked, stepping carefully onto the uneven ground, pizza box clutched tightly. Approaching the porch steps, I paused, listening. Silence. The wind rustled through dry branches, a faint whispering that sent a chill crawling down my neck. I knocked firmly, the echo resonating louder than expected. Nothing stirred inside. After knocking again and getting no answer, I stepped back, my anxiety growing. I took out my phone, dialed the number provided. As I waited, heart pounding, a faint ringing drifted from somewhere behind the cabin, swallowed by the woods. My breath caught, The ringing continued, faint yet distinct. Someone was out there, close but hidden. I spun around, eyes straining into the pitch-black trees, but saw nothing. "Hello?" I called, voice cracking despite my attempt to sound confident. Silence greeted me, oppressive and thick. I quickly hung up. Uneasy, I backed toward my car, noticing every tiny sound. The rustle of leaves, a twig snapping deep in the woods. My fingers fumbled with the pizza box as paranoia crept in. I dropped the box on the porch steps and moved, quickly toward my car. Just as I reached for the handle, headlights flashed behind me, blindingly bright. A large, dark vehicle had appeared silently, blocking my exit. A door slammed. Footsteps crunched toward me, deliberate and steady. I squinted against the glare, shielding my eyes, feeling panic rise sharply. "Jake," a deep, unfamiliar voice called, softly from the shadow behind the headlights. "Yeah," I stammered, frozen with dread. How did he know my name? A tall figure stepped out, silhouetted ominously against the glare. He moved slowly, hands hidden inside his jacket. I couldn't see his face clearly, but something about his presence screamed danger. "Thanks for bringing it out," he said calmly, voice low, controlled, almost soothing, yet completely unnerving. He took another step forward. I felt my pulse. "Tracing?" "No problem," I managed, voice shaking. I left the pizza by the door. "You can just pay online." He chuckled darkly. "Nah, cash only tonight, come inside." Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. "Look, just leave the money on the porch," I stammered, sliding into the driver's seat, heart hammering. "You sure about that, Jake?" He said calmly, stepping even closer, his boots crunching gravel. "Might be rude not to come in." I slammed my door shut, locking it just as his shadow fell over my window. His fingers brushed the glass lightly, trailing along it as he bent down, face still obscured by darkness. "You're smarter than you look," he whispered. I slammed the gas pedal, tires spinning dirt and gravel as the car lurched backward. The man stepped back calmly, unmoving, as if he expected me to flee. As I sped down the road, heart thundering, I caught glimpses of several shadowy figures emerging from the woods behind him, standing silently, watching me disappear. I drove faster, shaking, uncontrollably until I reached the highway. Only then did I stop, breathing ragged, fumbling for my phone. I dialed the police, words tumbling out chaotically. Within half an hour, flashing lights arrived at Tony's Pizza, where I'd parked in desperation, unable to face the rest of the drive home alone. Two officers listened quietly, exchanging wary glances as I described the cabin, the man, and his chilling insistence I come inside. Officer Davis, the older one, finally spoke up. "That place has been abandoned for years. Property owner went missing a couple months back," he said grimly. "What?" My throat felt tight, pulse racing anew. "Then who called in the delivery?" The officers exchanged another look. "We'll check it out. You did the right thing, leaving quickly." Days later, the news hit the local headlines. Officers discovered evidence that the Oak Ridge cabin had recently been used for criminal activities linked to multiple disappearances in the area. The man I'd encountered was never found, vanishing as silently as he appeared, leaving only a set of tire tracks heading deeper into the woods. I quit the delivery job immediately. Tony didn't argue, his eyes finally filled with rare guilt. But the nightmares persisted, headlights blinding me, the silhouette in the dark, that voice calmly inviting me inside. Now, months later, every dark road I drive and every isolated house I see reminds me of that night. The fear hasn't left me. Neither has the question. What would have happened had I gone inside? I rubbed my eyes, glancing wearily at the wall clock above the coffee machine. Midnight. The diner was empty, illuminated by the dull flicker of neon signs reflecting off rain-streaked windows. I was just about to lock up Joe's Diner when the bell above the door chimed softly, startling me awake. A tall, wiry man entered, hood pulled low, face shadowed. He shuffled nervously to the counter, his pale hands trembling slightly. Something about his posture, his quiet manner, felt off. "Closing soon," I called out, forcing politeness into my tired voice. He didn't respond, only placing a crumpled $20 bill and a handwritten address on the counter. "One burger, delivered here." "We don't normally," I started, but stopped myself. Joe's instructions had been clear. Take every order, even late-night ones. I sighed, picking up the paper. It read, 172 Old Mill Road. I knew the place, an abandoned farmhouse at the edge of Fairfield, a decaying ruin everyone avoided. Unease twisted in my stomach. "You sure about this?" I asked, glancing up. But the stranger was already gone, the bell above the door tinkling behind him. Reluctantly, I grabbed the burger from the grill and slipped into my car, the rain pounding harder as I drove out of town. Streetlights faded, replaced by oppressive darkness as Fairfield's empty countryside stretched around me, endless and suffocating. Old Mill Road was deserted, potholes jolting my car violently. Soon, the farmhouse loomed ahead, skeletal and sinister, in my headlights. My pulse quickened. Shadows crept along rotting wood siding, windows shattered into jagged glass teeth. The place seemed alive, breathing softly in the wind, waiting. Parking nervously, I stepped outside into the bitter chill. The farmhouse stood silent except for the faint creak of rusted hinges and the distant groan of old timber. Swallowing hard, I moved toward the porch, the wood beneath my shoes damp and soft. "Hello?" My voice trembled more than I liked. I knocked once, twice, each knock echoing into emptiness. Silence replied. Frustrated and anxious, I took out my phone and dialed the customer's number, expecting voicemail. Instead, a ringtone pierced the stillness from somewhere inside the farmhouse. My stomach clenched painfully. "Hello?" I shouted again, louder this time, dread seeping into every breath. No reply. But then, barely audible, I heard movement. Slow footsteps creaking quietly above me. Instinct screamed inside me. "Leave. Now." I spun toward my car, ready to abandon everything, when something caught my eye. Fresh footprints, imprinted deep in the mud, leading around the farmhouse's side toward the back. A faint glow flickered briefly in an upper window, vanishing almost immediately. Someone was definitely inside, watching, waiting. Adrenaline surged through my veins, panic tightening around my throat. I tossed the food bag onto the porch steps, backing away carefully. That's when headlights ignited suddenly behind my car, blinding me. A vehicle, silent until now, had blocked my only exit. Panic exploded in my chest. From the vehicle emerged a towering figure, silhouetted ominously against glaring headlights. He moved calmly, deliberately, one hand tucked ominously beneath his coat. My legs froze, panic locking my body rigid. Two more figures melted silently from the shadows around the farmhouse, hooded faces concealed, circling me slowly. My breath caught sharply. This was no random prank. This was carefully planned. Pulse hammering in my ears, I finally forced myself to move, sprinting desperately toward my car. Footsteps chased after me, swift and relentless, their breathing close behind. Lunged into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut just as a hand grasped at the handle, scratching frantically at the glass. The engine roared to life. Gritting my teeth, I slammed into reverse, tires spinning wildly in mud and gravel, the car fishtailing violently. The figures scattered, disappearing into darkness, but the tall man stood motionless, watching patiently from the shadows. His hidden face seemed to follow me even as I sped away, heart hammering wildly. I barely remembered the frantic drive back into Fairfield, or parking shakily outside the diner. My body shook uncontrollably, adrenaline still coursing painfully through my limbs. I called the police with trembling fingers, voice cracking as I recounted the nightmare. The responding officers exchanged grim glances when I mentioned the farmhouse, promising to investigate immediately. Morning brought more unsettling news. The farmhouse had been abandoned for decades, But police found fresh evidence inside. Restraints bolted to walls, blood-stained floors, discarded tools. Signs pointed unmistakably to violence, torture, something dark and deeply twisted. Yet no trace of the strangers remained. When I confronted Joe the next day, he barely looked up from his newspaper. "Probably kids playing pranks," he muttered dismissively. Fury burned in my gut. He'd sent me blindly into danger and didn't even care. I quit immediately, leaving behind Joe's ignorance and neglect. But escaping memories was far harder. Weeks passed and life in Fairfield returned to its quiet, sleepy rhythm. But every night shadows loomed darker in my dreams. Silent figures watching, footsteps following me, endlessly. Isolation, fear, helplessness. They all remained, deeply etched in my bones. Sometimes, in the dead silence of my new apartment, I wake abruptly, heart racing, convinced those shadowed figures stand waiting just beyond my door. Because deep down, I know they're still out there, unseen and patient, hidden behind Fairfield's gentle facade, waiting quietly. And perhaps, someday soon, they'll come for me again.